thinks it's at a higher stage of charge than it actually is. So I'm gonna have to get a hold of Battleborn and get some insight. So nothing's really out of whack there by my estimation. In September of 2021, I flew to Texas, bought an empty cargo truck, then drove it 1,100 miles back to Wisconsin, where I spent the following year building it out into a tiny living space. Now, I'm planning to travel the US, Mexico, and possibly Canada. I'm Jack Smackey. Sit back and join me while I take you along on a van life adventure. All right, so I'm experiencing some issues with my battery system, my charging system, if you will. What's been happening is the last few days there's been pretty cloudy, and because of the cloudiness I haven't been able to pull a very good supply of solar. So I've been breaking out the generator, not a big deal. It's what I got the generator for. However, for some reason the batteries or the system is getting to a point where it thinks it's at a higher stage of charge than it actually is. What's happening is that it's hitting a storage mode on the inverter charger at like 75%, according to the Victron app, which storage mode basically all it's doing is supplying enough power to take care of the AC load that's current. So basically just supplying power for the refrigerator and my computer that was running, so on and so forth, but it's not putting anything into the batteries. Well, with the batteries being at 73%, they're not fully charged. It's according to the Victron app. So I'm a little confused. I'm not really sure I understand the actual volts and amps aspect of this stuff. So I'm gonna have to get a hold of Battleborn and get some insight. Now, I've opened up the battery box, and one of my concerns has been, did I wire the system with heavy enough cable? Looking at it right now, we're down here in Corpus Christi, Texas. Temperatures are 75 degrees, which not too bad. Cabinet temperatures 85 degrees, which isn't too bad. The inverter chargers nominal at 90 to 100. So nothing's really out of whack there by my estimate. The cables for the most part feel cool, but there are the exit points of the batteries that go to the bus bars that are warm. To me, I'm wondering if there is a voltage drop or something of that nature between the battery and where it's reading the voltages for the Victron app, and maybe that's what's causing the problem. So what I might need to do is to upgrade my wires, either add another cable, or to just upgrade to a heavier cable altogether. Either way, it's going to cost a bit of, a couple of bucks to get that sorted. So I'm going to wait and see when I talk to Victron or Battleborn to get some insight, see what they say, and kind of go from there. Because right now, I'm currently looking at 65% on my batteries, and the charger's at an absorption state, which should still be in bulk mode by my understanding. We'll see. I'm gonna keep my eye on the generator here and the Victron app and determine when it does finally switch over to back to storage mode. Now that's just the Victron, that's just the inverter charger. Now I haven't seen the solar charge controller switch from bulk mode to some sort of absorption or anything like that. Now I haven't had a lot of sun to really test that theory, but it seems like that unit is working properly. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, but we'll get to the end of it. All right, so I'm not quite sure what's going on now. It seems to be working just fine. I've got the generator. I've had the generator charging now for, I don't know, hour or so, probably two. I'm not even sure how long I've been charging it, but it's currently at 98% state of charge, and the charging state is still at absorption, which is good. Like, that's what's supposed to be. Eventually, I would hope to think that it would switch to storage. At what point, I don't know what that is. I mean, realistically, if it hits 100% state of charge, it should switch over to storage mode, which that would be great. But yesterday, storage mode at 73%, 75%, that just didn't make any sense to me. So I'm still going to make a phone call and see if Battleborn can, help troubleshoot my system to see what caused that, because that's no go. That's a bad situation, because if it goes into storage mode when I'm at a lower state of charge, I won't be able to go overnight. It'll just I don't know how I'll recover from that. So I mean, this morning I woke up to the low state of charge alarm at 30%, so we'll see. I don't know. I guess we'll call them here in a little while and wait until I hit 100% and see if it switches over. When this switches over, I'll have a better idea, so we'll go from there. Okay, so we are at 100% state of charge. The smart controller, the charge controller for the solar, switched over from bulk to absorption, and the generator was only inputting as much AC power as it was using. So I've unhooked the generator, and the system is now being fully topped up and maintained by the solar, which is a good thing, because we're at 100%. So it worked as intended today. I don't understand what caused. I'm waiting for a phone call back from Battleborn to get some insight, but hopefully I don't have to worry about this too much, because that's kind of freaky. I don't really want to have this kind of issue with charging. I mean, I should be able to just plug the generator in. It should be able to just work as intended and go about my day, but I don't know. We'll see, I guess. All right, cool. I got some information from Battleborn. So apparently, when I sent my inverter charger back to Victron for service last fall, they must have reverted to factory settings, because when Battleborn ships out the inverter chargers, they come preset to the specs for what my intentions were. So the whole storage mode should not have ever been enabled. So at least that's what the tech said at Battleborn. So what they're going to do is they're going to send me a cable, which supposedly there's a loaner cable they're going to send me, but I'm like thinking, I'm on the road, and to have this loaner cable sent out every time I need to do something, in case I need to do something, is kind of inconvenient. So I'm going to look into seeing about purchasing the cable, so that way I have the cable to make the changes I need to make if and when I need to make them. Not have to worry about sending a cable back and forth, which is kind of, to me it's kind of silly. Especially in my situation. So going through the motions of getting all that organized right now. All right, so I'm experiencing some issues with my Victron inverter charger and battery system. Prior to this, before I even left on this journey, I had an issue with the Victron. Got sent in, for warranty. They sent it back. Unbeknownst to me, the settings inside were reverted to factory, which is different from how Battleborn ships them. And I didn't realize that, and I had some problems. So contacted Battleborn, and they set me up with a data cable to be able to connect to the Victron Connect on the computer. So I've got that cable and went through their suggested documentation on how to set it up, and everything seemed to be fine in terms of that application. But what I'm seeing is the inverter charger is jumping into absorption mode way lower than what I anticipated absorption mode to be, start at. It is based on voltage, of course, but when the state of charge is like 68, 70%, I wouldn't expect to see absorption at that level. I got a hold of Battle Born again today, waiting for them to call back to verify some numbers. But what I'm seeing is a significant voltage differential between checking it at inverter versus at the batteries and along the whole line of connections. So I'm getting, the Victron app is set up to go to absorption at 14.4 volts, and at the at the inverter it's 14.4. But as we go down the line, starting with the fuse, it drops to 14.3, 14.2. Hit the bus bar and it's down to 14.2. Go to the kill switch, we're already down to 14. And then when we hit the battery, we're like at 13.8, which doesn't sound like a significant difference, but that's, I guess, is how 12-volt systems work. I don't understand that level of it, so I don't know how minute of a difference a couple of volts or tenths of a volt is going to make on a system or not. But at the end of the day, that's what I'm sort of dealing with. So they asked me to check those situations, various points along the system, to check for that, and then also check for any heat that I'm experiencing. So what I figured, based on the paperwork and documentation that I went through, and I looked at various sources, that I felt that the wire size that I used was adequate. We're dealing with a very, very small footprint, so I went with a number 2 gauge wire. According to what I was seeing and everything, it looked like that would be an adequate, actually oversized kind of thing. But I'm looking at it now, and I'm seeing that some of the wires coming from the inverter into the switch and stuff are hot. So my thoughts is that that's a problematic situation, is where some of my voltage loss is coming, is just an undersized wire. I mean, it's trying to charge and it's putting in quite a bit in there, and it's just not working, So any rate, so what I'm thinking that I'm going to do, and this is something that I've pondered about, because I've had kind of thoughts in my head, like, did I size this adequately? Like, I seriously thought that I built this, or with the right size wire. But after thinking about it, and future plans is to install solar on my trailer, which means getting power from the trailer into the van. That's a significant difference in length. I think it's worthy of upgrading the wiring from the batteries to the inverter. Everything else I think is fine. All the other wiring that I've got done is fine. It's just the batteries, the battery cabling from the batteries to the bus bars to the inverter is undersized. So I'm gonna check out and get some supplies. I'm gonna probably upgrade to a minimum of 2-aught, but at the end of the day, I'm definitely gonna get a beefier wire here, and hopefully that'll solve the issue of the voltage discrepancies. All right, well, I am set. I'm set to make the upgrades to the electrical system. Upgrades meaning I'm upsizing the wire that I'm using for my batteries and inverter connections. What I had used was number 2 gauge, and by my humble estimation, 2 gauge in the length of wire that I was running with, which is very short. It's a small electrical compartment. I was pretty confident that that was a good, that it was an adequate size. Now, what I didn't really think about or factor in was the various connections and the potential voltage drop or resistance from them. So what I'm seeing is a variance of voltage in between the different spots in the electrical system. Specifically, my inverter, when it's charging, creates a significant amount of resistance, so the voltage is being read as higher than it should be, higher than other areas of the electrical path. You know, so reading closer to the batteries, there's less resistance versus where the inverter charger is being connected at, and the resistance to the batteries from there. So what's happening is that the inverter charger is thinking that it's at a float stage when it's in fact still in, you know, bulk charging voltage, the batteries themselves. So what I've done is I've upsized the wire from 2 gauge to 2/0. All right, so I got this handy dandy hydraulic crimper, and this is the finished product. It's a 2 gauge lug, 3/8 hole on that side and a 5/16 hole on the side. I've got the heat shrink on it already, so that's basically what I'm going to end up doing. So independently, you know, working my way through the wiring on the battery, we'll replace all these number 2 gauge with the number 2/0. So pretty big difference in size there. So hopefully that will make a big difference. All right, so I have got all of the battery connections, all the battery cables updated. So all the negative all the way down to the bus bar and to the inverter charger, and all of the positive all the way to the inverter charger as well. I think I'm going to upgrade this smart controller, charge controller, upgrade the wiring on there too, to see if I can squeeze a little bit more out of it if I could. All right, what a pretty grand improvement the upsizing of the wires made. I upgraded the battery wires from 2 gauge to 2/0, and that actually goes all the way to the inverter charger. And then I also, what I did was the wiring from the solar, which was probably fine with 6 gauge wire, but I upgraded that also to 2 gauge. So I used the leftover 2 gauge from I used the leftover 2 gauge wire from what I replaced on the batteries and upgraded the solar. So everything's got upgraded wire sizes. So, and I'm already seeing an improvement in the Victron app. Before, I had an issue with voltage disparity, and I think a lot of it depends upon, you know, where the voltage is being read from. I know now that I did have a lot of resistance from just all the connectors that I had. You know, maybe the wire was, you know, adequately sized in a solid form, but when you cut it up and add, you know, a billion connectors in between, you know, that changes the whole dynamics of it. So I'm not seeing the big voltage differences that I was seeing before. I still have a little bit of a voltage difference, but it does seem you know, better. And also the amps, I got it plugged into shore power, and I'm also taking on solar right now, so I'm pulling in a lot more amps than I've ever seen. So perhaps there was just a limitation on what could be pushed through. Definitely the upsizing of the wire definitely made a big improvement. So what I got left, or what I got now, is basically everything's all put back together, cable tied. There might be a couple more cable ties I can throw in here, but for the most part, the wiring upgrade. The only other thing that I could possibly do is upgrade the direct feed the 12 volt feed to the 12 volt panel, upgrade that to 2 gauge also. It's currently 6 gauge. I have the wire to do that. I could very well do that. I probably will do that, but it's already been a long day. Tripped down the stairs once, smacked myself in the face just trying to do a zip tie, and it slipped because my hands were wet from the sweat. Punched myself in the eye. So I think that's enough of the wiring for the day. I got a lot done. I got what I wanted done. Thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to check out next week's video. And if you like the content, be sure to like and subscribe.